Hello and welcome back to The Climate Skeptic. I'm your host, Laurie Wastel, an associate editor at the Daily Skeptic. So first, it was the dodgy dossier. Now it's dodgy claims about solar panels. Just what is Machiavellian Blairite spin doctor Alistair Campbell hawking over on his podcast, The Rest is Politics? And what does it say about the green blob? Well, to discuss that today, I'm very pleased to be joined by David Turver, who is a Daily Skeptic regular and the author of the Eigenvalues Substack. Welcome, David.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Laurie, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, very good to have you here as well, and Happy New Year. Okay, well, so neither of us are habitual Rest is Politics viewers, and I dare say Skeptic viewers aren't either. But nevertheless, this is quite an influential podcast. And as you wrote about in your piece for us recently, well, you happened upon it, I think, partly because your wife listens to it occasionally. And, you're somewhat surprised to find, or even really appalled to find them hawking solar panels. And so Alistair Campbell doing that in particular in this very brazen way, and which is in fact massively underselling the problems with this source of energy. And I suppose tell us a bit about that. So what did you hear and why did it strike you as so outrageous?
Yeah, well, occasionally I do have to listen to The Rest is Politics because for some inexplicable reason my wife actually quite likes Rory Stewart. But this particular clip came up on my Twitter X feed, which is about a minute and a half or something, where they are supposed to be dispassionately answering questions from some of their podcast listeners, and they use it as a vehicle to essentially promote solar power. So at one point, Rory Stewart says,
"It is a very cheap, affordable way to generate electricity."
And then Alistair thinks he might be a bit weird because he actually quite likes seeing our countryside being industrialised by solar panels.
Am I weird? I like looking at huge solar farms. I love when I'm on a train and I'm going through a sort of middle-sized British town. I love it when I look up and some of the houses have got their little solar panels on there. Am I just a bit weird?
And then they sort of like move on to sort of like a free promo for Fuse Energy, saying that listeners can get sort of like a £2,000 reward if they offer up some land to further despoil our countryside.
Well, anyway, Fuse Energy is on the case, people. Britain's clean energy future will appear field by field, where solar fits naturally, strengthens local communities, brings long-term value to the land. And here's the thing. If you think you know land, contact Fuse Energy at land@fuseenergy.com, start a referral, and you have the chance to win £2,000.
And that struck me as, more than a little odd. And not exactly true either. So I decided to do a bit of digging. Well, I'd already done a lot of digging, but do some more digging and just look at the quality of their claims, or look at the quality of the key claim that solar is cheap and affordable, which is obviously not true. So we have 3 subsidy schemes for solar power. And those are feed-in tariffs, which are the most expensive. And we just recently had the Ofgem's report for 24-25. And electricity produced under the feed-in tariff, which is mostly solar, is something like £229 per megawatt hour, which is getting on for 3 times the current market price of electricity, which is, as most people usually say, is mostly set by gas. But even that sort of like overstates the gas contribution, because gas power currently costs about £80 per megawatt hour, and £28 of that, or more than a third, is carbon costs, which are simply sort of made up costs to make gas look less competitive. Then we have another subsidy scheme called renewable obligation certificates, of which there are no new projects coming online, but nevertheless we still have to pay for those legacy projects. And they get the market rate plus renewable obligation certificates, which have a value of about £97 per megawatt hour. And the market rate achieved for solar is generally less than that of gas. So that gives a total of about £196 per megawatt hour. And then we have contracts for difference. And if we look at active contracts, then they cost about on average about £69 per megawatt hour, of which only about £2 is subsidies. So on the face of it, that looks like it's actually quite competitive. However, there's a but, and it's quite a big but, is that intermittent energy sources like wind and solar disproportionately cause extra grid balancing costs, and of course they need backup. So we pay those grid balancing costs and backup costs through our bills, and if you work through the maths together, they add about £33 per megawatt hour to the cost of intermittent renewables. So that puts the costs of current contracts for difference up at around £102 per megawatt hour, which is much more expensive than gas. And various protagonists on Twitter say, "Oh yes, but you're comparing the old contracts for difference. What about the new ones?" Well, the new ones are even worse. So we, or not last year, 2024 now, sorry. Now we're in 2026. There was what's called allocation round 6, and new contracts were awarded to solar power at £72 per megawatt hour in today's money, which is more expensive than the current average out there. And allocation round 7 will be announced later this year, 2026, and the prices on offer are £78 per megawatt hour. Now, they may come in, typically the actual contracts are awarded a little bit below the maximum offer price, but still, one, the prices are going up, and two, when you include the full cost of integrating into the grid, they're much more expensive than gas, even with the carbon tax attached, carbon cost attached. So the central claim of the clip that solar is cheap and affordable is completely false. Now, it's not entirely unsurprising. The World Bank did a report in, I think, about 2020, and they found that the UK was the second worst country after Ireland for solar power. So it's not surprising it's expensive. And of course, it's really pretty useless because it produces most during the summer days when our demand is low. And if we have too much solar capacity on the grid, then we risk a sort of like a Spanish blackout situation like they had in April last year. And of course, in the winter, like now or yesterday, when our demand sort of like soared to sort of over 50 gigawatts, when it's dark, and it's going dark now as we speak, solar producing literally zero. So it is absolutely no use in solving our energy problems, and it's more expensive.
Well, you laid out the case against it very thoroughly there, David. But I suppose it's interesting to go back to this podcast, The Rest is Politics, and what it represents, because, I mean, this is an almost advertorial, as you laid out. It's not very grounded in facts, certainly, but this is one of the most popular politics podcasts in the country. A lot of people listen to it, and a lot of people take the kinds of things Alistair Campbell is saying, strangely enough, as read. Or green, you might say, I suppose. But and I think that's interesting because he is, in fact, the sort of culture warrior type who would be the first to accuse his opponents of taking money from big oil or something, or peddling disinformation, or if it's reform, of being in hock to Russia or Putin or something like